Welcome to the Thrive Today podcast. I'm Natalie Bourne. I'm the media host for Thrive Today and the founder of Innovation Meets Leadership. And I'm so excited because guess what? Today I'm talking to one of my favorite guests to have on a podcast. That's right. I am interviewing Sangram Vajre for the third time. I've interviewed him on my other podcasts, but I'm so excited to bring him to Thrive Today. He's actually going to be in one of our upcoming editions of the Thrive Today magazine. So I want to dive right in and tell our listeners a little bit about you, about your background. Tell us what you want us to know.
Wow. Well, first of all, third time.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. I'm like, wait, I don't know. I did not pay you enough. I got it that third time. But I grew up in India.
Yeah.
For 25 years of my life. And quick story. This time I went to India. I came back to Atlanta airport. And it was the weirdest feeling. For the first time, I said, as soon as I landed in Atlanta, I said, "Oh, I'm back home." I'm like, wait, did I not just go home? And did I just come home? So it had that weird, because it's almost like equal amount of years now for me to be living and growing up in India. And now that I've been in the States, and it's like, well, for the first time I called it home. Yeah. And it was like a very visceral feeling around that. So,
yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Well, I want to know like a little bit about your backstory. I've gotten to read a little bit about you, and of course we've talked a lot. Like, I want to hear a little bit about how you even got here in the first place, because like you showed up with not that much money in your pocket.
Yeah, it was $350 to be exact. My brother was here in 2000, 2001, and obviously when 9/11 happened, the entire economy of the world went sideways, and he came back to India, and I just finished my bachelor's, my engineering degree, and he said, "You're not going to get a job. The world is just not going to be ready for this, but maybe you should go to the States, and it's just a different way of living, different way of educating. Just spend next 2 years educating yourself. Wow. I'll pay for your application fees, but everything else you're on your own." So that's how I came here. I'm like, all right, well, the application fees I actually tricked him on this one. So the application fee was about $350.
Oh, wow.
So for me, I'm like, when I was going through the exams, if I can apply for for whichever university right then and there, it's free application. So I said, okay, I chose University of Alabama. Somehow I got into University of Alabama, and I got $350, and that's how I got here.
Wow. Well, so just coming from India to Alabama, that had to be a culture shock.
Twice. Culture shock. Yes. Like, it's one thing to see any, the movies that you see and what you think about different countries. And then when you actually come down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and then you look at the first thing you see is Roll Tide. I'm like, wait a minute, is that a flag? Like, what is that thing? And then you see everybody in football, the jerseys and everything, and you realize, oh, that is a religion of sorts.
Totally.
So it was fascinating.
Yeah.
But you know what? Yeah. Over there, I did learn about hospitality.
Southern hospitality at that.
Totally. Yeah. Right. I will never forget this. This was at McDonald's. There's almost, a 70, 80-year-old, a man just holding the door. I was on the other side of the road. Wow. And he was still holding the door for me. And I would never forget his face. And he was just holding it for almost 30 seconds. And I've crossed the road, and I'm just wondering, like, is he waiting for somebody else? Like, that's for me, like, me, this guy. I always want to remember to hold the door for other people in life, because that moment really changed the way I thought about it.
Yeah, from across the street, he was waiting for you.
Waiting for me.
It's really cool.
The whole time. He would probably never know. He must have done that for other people. But for me, that was a moment that changed the way I thought about people and how people can love each other by just holding the door.
Wow. Well, so I want to talk a little bit about your business background. So you came from Alabama.
Yeah.
And then somehow you made your way to Atlanta.
Yep.
So talk about how do we get to Atlanta?
Well, so obviously there was not much happening in Tuscaloosa. So we used to come down almost every weekend to Atlanta just to have, some way of like, all right, what else is there? Like big city, like, tall buildings, like just see something else other than just flat terrain. And Atlanta was something that I came all the time. I did get my first job in Deloitte Consulting. Oh. And that was in Atlanta. So that brought me over there. And I remember they never hired a master's candidate because they thought, well, if you're doing your master's, you're going to ask for more money.
Right.
Well, I had only $350, so there was nothing that I didn't care about much money. I'm like, I'm fine. He's like, no, we only hire undergraduate. We never hire graduates. I'm like, that's totally fine. You can hire me. So I was the first graduate student they ever hired from University of Alabama for at Deloitte Consulting for the job I did. And I was happy as anything because I got a job.
Yeah. So you kind of worked your way up. You ended up in Salesforce for a period of time.
Yeah.
Then you went and launched a startup, and that went really, really well. And
Yeah.
then you had this moment where you said, hey, I need to kind of go out on my own. Talk about that path and that journey.
Yeah. At Pardot, when my last company where I was running marketing, I didn't start that Pardot. I ran marketing and we got acquired by ExactTarget and then by Salesforce.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. All of a sudden, we went from about 200 people or so to about 20,000.
Wow.
And in a matter of months. And so everything just exploded for us. And I learned a lot. I stayed there for 2 years. And then we saw a typical challenge that I would never forget again, another experience where we hit every single record there was for number of leads that we could drive. And then my head of sales comes to me and says, Sangram, you did such a good job. You and your team are creating so many leads for us. Can you generate additional 3,000 leads?
Of course. The marker always moves, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, whoa. How about we just talk about how do we close deals faster?
Yeah.
How about we talk about how do we use whatever we have and drive more conversions in that?
Yeah.
What about any of that? And they're like, no, I think we're good. We just generate more leads. It just made me think like a coin-operated lead machine.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that got to be changed.
Yeah.
So that led to start a company called Terminus.
Okay.
And the story of Terminus is also very fascinating because I met both Eric Spett and Eric Vass, who are the co-founders of Terminus.
Okay.
At literally one of their pitch practice. Like they were doing pitch at Atlanta Tech Village and I saw them, I met them, I saw what they were doing. And I said, well, if you can turn that into a product as opposed to an agency, I think there's a lot of value in that. They said, okay, well, if you're so passionate, why don't you join us as a founder and let's go do this thing. So I come back and I tell Manmeet, my wife, hey, you know what? I just met 2 guys and we're going to change the world. Like, the typical story around it. And she's like, well, just so you know, we just had our second baby. Yeah. She's 4 months old, 4 weeks old, not 4 months, 4 weeks old. I'm not working right now. I've taken a break. You are working at Salesforce, which is taking care of things. We're immigrants. Like, just remember, we have to keep our status and all that. And I'm like, all that is good. It's fine. I got to do this thing because I totally think this can change things. And she said to me, after a few weeks of back and forth, she straight up looked in my eyes and said, all right, Sangram, I can see you want to do this. And if you don't do this, you're going to regret. And I'm like, yes. I'm going to regret. She's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a job, a job so that we can keep things running in the house. We were going to put our daughter, we didn't plan so early in a daycare. It wasn't the plan so early to do that. We're going to do all that. But here's the thing. You have 1 year. In 1 year, you show me this thing has legs. Otherwise, you're going to go find a real job. Natalie, I think that was the best thing she could have done for me. Yeah,
you had all the skin in the game right there.
Right? Every day I'm coming home, she's obviously taking a kid, like she's doing all these things. And I couldn't believe it. And so that year, that's all I focused on. And I think it changed the way we went about and go to market for this.
That's so powerful. Well, I want to hear a little bit about your backstory as a believer. So you're having all this success at work and all these things. Where did Christ enter in this whole kind of journey that you've been on work-wise?
Yeah. So after that wonderful 1 year of building Terminus and doing everything, whatever it takes, almost a year and a half later, Manmeet comes to me and said, I don't think you're the same person anymore.
Wow.
I think we need to separate.
Wow. Oh.
And wait a minute. Whoa. Is this not all this what we all agreed on, we discussed? And she said, yeah, but not at the cost of when you have completely changed who you are.
Wow.
And I couldn't really, it took me a while to grasp it, and it only made me even more mad about the situation that we were in. And she was right, which made me even more mad. It's like, oh, you're right. Like it just, I'm no longer the person I was. I'd rather have become a lot more prideful, a lot more, I know what I know and I can do everything. And whatever I'm touching is turning to gold. Like I had all these feelings inside of me had changed from me that person who came at the $350
Yeah.
and tried to build stuff. Now
Yep.
that I've built stuff, I have forgotten
Right.
the person she married.
Yeah.
She knows me for 20 plus years.
Right.
And she's like, you're just a different person.
Wow.
So we're on the brink of divorce with 2 kids.
Wow.
And everything under the sun from a American dream perspective
Right.
working for us. And she, in a moment, her mom asked her like, hey, go and talk to your cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Your cousin who's in London, who was a Sikh before
Mm-hmm.
and became Christian.
Wow.
And so when we talked to her, and for whatever reason, she felt like that was the first time
Wow.
somebody prayed for her.
Wow.
And she said, I've never had anybody pray for me
Wow.
like that. And things just started to happen in her life.
Wow.
And at that point, we have never heard the name Jesus
Yeah.
before that. Believe it or not, being
Wow.
in the States for 15 plus years at that time, our neighbors being Christians, we have never heard the name Jesus.
It was all around you, but nobody was sharing
Nobody
it.
ever shared it. And that's why a lot of times you think like, we need to go to mission trips to do all
Yeah.
these things. This is mission life all
Right here,
around us.
right in our neighborhood.
Right in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we were in all these circles. We were never even exposed to that. Maybe we are not ready. Maybe we didn't hear. Maybe nobody tried. But it never really, I didn't even know
Wow.
who Jesus was. And she's like, something is happening. And then one day when we were having an argument, she said, I need to take the plank out of my eyes before I tell you what's wrong with you. I'm like,
what?
Where is that? Where's that coming
Yes.
from? Because you can fight back
Right.
on that. She's like, well,
Yeah.
that's what Jesus said.
Yeah.
That you got to do is you got to take the speck out of it and
Yeah.
not look at the plank in your, the person in front of you.
Yeah.
And that, I'm like, who's Jesus? I literally asked as if there's a guy she's talking to.
Talking to, right? Who's this guy you're talking to?
No, he's the person from the Bible, and
Wow.
and then I asked her all kinds of questions, and she
Wow.
said, I don't have answers for these questions, but I know that Jesus does,
Wow.
and I'm going to continue to pursue that. And
Wow.
I'm like, look, wait. I'm a Hindu,
Right.
Hindu. You're a Sikh.
Yeah.
We don't need a third religion in order for us to fix our marriage.
Right.
There got to be
Right.
a better thing. And she's no, I believe in Jesus.
Wow.
And I think I'm pursuing this thing. And I'm not going to quit on you. And
That was huge. After saying,
yeah,
we're done,
Yep.
to now I'm not going to quit,
yeah,
you knew something in the middle had changed.
Something big.
Yeah.
And as I was traveling, I literally picked up the King James Version Bible at the airport.
Yes.
So the airport Bible do sell,
Yeah.
for people like me. So I picked up and I started reading it.
Wow.
And obviously it was, the King James Version is hard to
Yes.
read.
Yes, it is.
In a way. So then I found out and I bought the NIV version so I
Yes.
can actually fully
Understand what's
it.
happening.
And it really, I just kept going through it, and I started to read and I started to watch debates, and I started
Wow.
to watch, and all in the pursuit, Natalie, to prove her wrong.
Wow.
I still wasn't there. The pride in me was so high that, okay, I'm just going to prove her wrong, and
Right.
this debate will be over and
Wow.
move on, right? 6 months into it, I've gone through, for the first time, I actually purchased Indian text of Vedas.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if I'm pursuing truth, I just want to know the truth. I
Yeah.
don't care what the truth is.
Right.
I just want to know the truth.
Wow.
So I bought Vedas. So for the first time, I read Hindu scriptures. I've never read those.
Wow.
For the first time, I bought a Quran. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if there is
You're getting all of it. Like,
all of
what
it,
is
right?
it? Yeah.
So I brought everything I could purchase. I purchased a bunch of books. I listened to a bunch of videos and podcasts and whatnot. And then finally I said, okay, I'm just going to create a list. I think I'm done. 6 months into it. One night I was sitting down. I created a line straight in the middle and top. Why you should believe and why I should not believe, right? And why I should believe. I started to write. I'm like, I'm tired. Why I should believe. Let me start writing why I should not believe. And it was blank.
Wow.
I couldn't write anything in that
Wow.
side of the page.
Wow.
And so that day was the first day for me, things just changed. Like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? This is insane.
Just too many reasons to
Yeah.
believe.
And this is all intellectual. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much spiritual stuff then started to happen in our lives
Yeah.
that we can get into it. But intellectually, like, I felt like if you are just putting things together and if you're purely seeking the truth, it would be crazy not to see the truth in front of you, given all the historical record,
Yeah.
all the details around it, and the reason why Jesus came and died. And when you distill it down, it's like, well, there's nothing like this that
Wow.
I can even compare to. So that restored our marriage back. We both truly became the evangelist for it, for
Wow.
each other.
Wow.
But it took a while.
And you started seeking together.
Seeking together.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's an amazing story. I have never known that it was your wife
Yeah.
that basically led you to Christ.
She totally, like, her transformation is my testament.
Yeah.
She transformed. I knew her even before that time for almost 20 years. We graduated together in India, and we had 2 years of long distance
Wow.
relationship. Then I came here, did my master's. Then I went back, we got married, and she came here. So we have so much history together. So I
Wow.
knew her.
Yes.
And if there was a change, I knew that change wasn't temporary.
That's
There
right.
was a new creation
Wow.
happened in her without even going through all of it. And nobody was telling us anything.
Wow.
Nobody was talking about us. It
Yeah.
was just happening in our lives.
Wow.
Right in our living room.
Wow.
Without somebody talking to us. It was the craziest thing that we were experiencing, and we knew this wasn't us.
Right.
What was going on?
Well, I love how that then merged, your new relationship with Jesus over time had kind of merged into you launching your new business and really kind of thinking about, how do you want to work? Like,
Yeah.
how do I want to show up at work? What does that need to look like long term? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I remember during my heyday of building the first business, the way I had on LinkedIn, I said, I want to be a CEO of $1 billion company. That was my headline. And talk about ego as big as it can get. Let's just be real about it. It was so bad.
Yeah.
And now I can talk about it because I recognize
Yeah.
where that came from.
Right.
And then it changed to, like, now it's like, I want to figure out a way to help 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Like, just
That's cool.
how you direct your ego to a
Yes.
different side of it. Now I'm recognizing it. It actually helped me to think differently about giving up and letting go.
Wow.
I felt like things, anytime I couldn't do this, it was more about giving up. And that's a failed mindset. Yeah. And it really helped me. Now I'm letting go of the things, and I'm actually choosing to do these things. It was a big shift in everyday life.
Wow. I love that. And so there's this blog that you wrote, and I just have so enjoyed it. It's one of the featured posts that you have. And you kind of talk about, you go through the list. You're like, look, I almost divorced.
Yeah.
I went down the list. Like, what was really the fire that said, I want to do it different. I want to start my own thing, and I want to do it different. Like, what was the fire there? Like, what was the moment that pushed you where you knew it's time to leap? Because I think a lot of our people listening, they want to know, like, what does that spark look like for them when it's time to leap? Like, how do they know it's time to jump out of the boat and walk on water, even though it's terrifying?
Yeah, it is, and it still is. Manmeet will joke, like, I know you're going to continue to keep starting because this is someone who you are, like, it is DNA. What's interesting about the new business that I started, and the reason I started, and I'm publicly talking about how I'm doing it, it's funny, like, the 5 people that we have in this new business, we're praying every time we meet. Cool. We're praying. We're just doing it differently, right? Like, we are before we go and do a workshop or something, we pray and say, let this be you, God, revealed, and use us. If this is, help us do the best work of our lives here. Just a different level of outcome that we're seeking, as opposed to a pure play financial outcome. Right. Like now, when you see companies doing layoffs like crazy, like now you see the whole thing, like and I'm hearing company CEOs talking, well, we're going to lay off 25% of the people so we can show that we have growth over X%. And in January, we're going to hire about 10% of them. Right. I'm like, that's just playing with lives. Yes. And I think it's all just rooted in not understanding the value of a life. Right. And I think now that I'm starting a new business, I'm just being like, well, we're not going to do anything just because I want to do it. I want to show something, or we want to be the fastest growing company, or be some label. We just want to do things right. Right. And that's how we're trying to do now. That's super exciting. And that's fun. Yeah. It's fun when you come to work and you know that you're doing it the way that God's called you to do it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard. Yeah. At the same time. Absolutely. Because, last company I raised over 100 million with investments. Like, this company I'm not going to raise, because I realize that when you raise, you're almost mortgaging your ability to make decisions. Right. So this time we're not going to do that. So that means we're going to make some hard decisions. We're going to find ways. So when we hire somebody, We're going to look at that person as we're going to hire them because they're the best person, and we're not going to just try to let go for any financial number that we want, a metric that we want to make. We're going to let go of people if they're not right fit, or where the business has changed, on all those reasons, for the right reasons that they know, but not forever for any financial metric.
That's so good. Talk to me a little bit about your new book. Move, which we have right here, which is such an awesome book. Talk a little bit about what caused you to write it, and just, I love the fact that you even are happy to talk about the people that disagree with you on this book, which is pretty cool too.
So Move, which is the 4-question go-to-market framework, it's really stemmed out of the idea that most people don't know.
Let's try that again. Here, I'm going to lay that. There you go.
Gonna move.
It's going to move.
So on the Move book, we started writing this, me and Brian Brown, who's my co-author on this book. We started writing this about 2.5 years ago. And it was to help companies think about what should be their next move. There are a lot of companies that have great products. They have great idea. They're great founders. They're very hardworking. But still, less than 1% of those companies actually would ever see the life in their product turning into what customer would desire to have. We see this all the time. And because me and Brian and some of us, we have seen that, and we were blessed enough to do it over and over again, we're like, we don't want to start another software company where we just make money for ourselves. Let's just build so that we can help hundreds of companies do this better. So that's what's the genesis of Move, is to help you figure out what your next move should be. And so we interviewed a whole bunch of VCs, CEOs, CMOs, CROs, all different people, like what have they done, distilled down into 4 questions for go-to-market that companies need to answer regardless of what stage of the business they're in. And then we do workshops, we help companies do that from day one.
That's so cool. How can people find you? How can they follow you? How can they learn a little bit more about you?
Right. So a couple of places. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Like, that's one place.
That is your spot. You hang out there.
It's been 4 years that I've posted 3 to 4 times a week.
So cool.
Just consistently. And you can go to sangramhere.com, and where we have a framework here. I'm a framework guy. I love creating frameworks. I've created about 21 different frameworks for the business of marketing, leadership, and life. So people can download it on sangramhere.com.
I love that. Okay, so I have to ask before we're out, what is the best business advice you've ever gotten, and what's the worst business advice you've ever gotten?
All right. The best one, I think I've learned this one. And I'll tell you the worst one in a second. The best one that I've learned is that being intentional is way more important than being brilliant.
Okay.
A lot of people think they're brilliant, and they probably are, but if they're not intentional in the area that their lane of genius, whatever God has instilled in them, they would just be fluttering around all their lives and will never, ever achieve the significance they want to have in their life.
Wow. That's so true. Several people just flashed before my eyes in my own life where I'm like, they are brilliant, but they're not intentional. And so therefore they spin in a circle. They don't actually move in a direction. So that's real.
So that I've learned. The second part is I've heard the worst advice that I've got around that is that, well, you can only do, you can achieve anything in life you want. I think that's the worst advice ever, because the truth is that you can achieve anything in life you want, but not all at the same time.
And that's really important for people to hear.
Right?
Because we're told we can have it all. And when we try to, we find ourselves wanting. Strangely.
You can't. Like, if I want to have all the other things and at the same time have a better life and better family and all that stuff, if you want all of it, then you have to sacrifice things, and you have to understand that you're going to make sure that this is important at some point, this is important at other point, but you can't just have everything and say, well, I want everything in life all at the same time. Chances are it's not going to happen.
It's so good.
It's a hard truth.
That is so good. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this interview. This is, again, one of my favorite people to interview because he's just so real, but he also has the business chops. So I hope you'll go check out all those places he told you to follow. And ladies, as you live your life, we want you to do it with leadership, community, and strength. And don't forget to thrive. We'll see you next time.